Oh, well, this is it, everyone. Darkside Phil here, and this is the final countdown to E3. Starting tomorrow, you're going to have press conferences, you're going to have all kinds of information coming out of the convention, even though, I called it a convention, out of the expo, or you should call it the event, I guess, which, unfortunately, you know, I won't be able to attend these press conferences. These are more like behind closed doors things for press only. Which is kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. But yeah, this is it. The Media Blitz has begun. Starting tomorrow at 8:30 a.m., John Rambo and I will be en route to LA to attend E3, to belch, and to cover the event in every way that we possibly can. And we're very, very excited. And so what I wanted to do was to take some time to talk about my past as a gamer, my history as a gamer, how my life, I feel, has changed and kind of gone in different phases over the past 10-15 years, and led me ultimately to where I am today, and being able to attend E3. And then a very last minute thing, because this is the last video I will be putting up before we head to E3 tomorrow, is that I want to talk a little bit about our plans and our schedule and how we're going to try to get stuff done this week, okay? Yeah, you know, I grew up as a gamer, absolutely. When I was a kid, I think my first exposure to video games was when I went over to my uncle's house one day, and he was playing something on his computer. I was like, what the hell is that? And he was like, oh, look, come. And he gave me a joystick. It was one of those old pixely games for the computer, and I was playing it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I've never seen anything like this before. Now, up to then, I was a kid, you know, really young. I probably had only seen TV and books and music, but I had never seen a video game. And every time after that I went over to my uncle's house, he would play different video games. Sometimes it was computer games, sometimes he had actually Atari, one of the original Atari systems. And I kind of got my exposure to video games from that. And then later on, he actually gave me one of his older Atari systems when he was done with it. It was the Atari 7800. And he gave me a whole bunch of Atari 2600 and 7800 games with it. So at home, I was playing games. But what happened is, you know, my dad actually worked the night shift, and so he would actually play games with me like before dinner every night, and then he would go to work afterwards. So it was pretty cool. Like every day I'd go to school, I'd come home, I'd play some games with my dad on the Atari, and then we'd eat dinner together, he'd go to work, and I had this kind of, you know, interactive experience with my dad playing video games. Then what really happened that gave me the gaming bug, and especially the arcade gaming bug, was that as I got a little bit older, a friend of mine had said, I was a real big fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now every kid in the world, I don't want to say in the world, every kid, at least in the United States at the time, was a huge fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The biggest craze, the cartoon was huge, the action figures were huge, everything was super popular, super lucrative at the time. And my friend of mine said, did you play the game yet? I was like, what game? You mean for like Nintendo? He's like, no, not that piece of crap. I said, no, I'm talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. I was like, what the hell's an arcade game? Because I did have some exposure to arcade games because there was a local newspaper store that I went to every Sunday. Also with my dad, we would walk there together and get the newspaper. Maybe I would play a quick game. And I remember they had games like the original Ninja Gaiden. They had the arcade game for it. But it was like a dingy cabinet. It was never really kept very well. So I didn't understand. I thought, oh, this is just some kind of a weird thing someone threw here. I didn't understand there were entire buildings and businesses full of these machines. So one day my friend says, well, you gotta come out to this mall with me and we'll go check it out. I was like, okay. So, you know, walked in and there it is, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Now this is when it was brand new, colorful, bright, vibrant cabinet with graphics from the cartoon, 4-player simultaneous gameplay. The graphics were amazing for the time. The game was awesome. It featured all the characters from the cartoons. It had actual digitized voices in it. It blew me away. It was better than anything I'd played on the Atari up to that point. And that's kind of like when I got the bug. After playing that game, I actually found out there was a local arcade, not even just a couple miles from my house, and I started going there regularly every single weekend. Now, over the course of, you know, as I grew up, started to become a younger adult, teenager, I got into consoles heavily, you know. It started with had the NES. I actually was a late adopter to the NES. When I bought the NES, Super Mario 3 had just come out, so that's how late I was. I was playing Atari and going to video arcades. But finally I got the NES a little bit late, Super NES when it came out, then I was a late adopter to the Genesis. I actually preferred the Super NES over the Genesis because I had already had the original NES, so I thought it was just like a step up. I didn't understand what the Genesis was at the time, that it was a competing console. But eventually I did get the Genesis, and then as the newer generations came out after that, I kind of ignored the whole Sega CD generation, but then you had things like the PlayStation, and they moved into the Dreamcast, and all that kind of stuff I had, okay? At the same time, I was heavily into arcade video games, because arcades were the rage in the 90s. Street Fighter 2 blew arcades up. I mean, you were talking, they were little dingy, buildings where people would stand there and play these really pixely crappy games, and then Street Fighter 2 came out, and that was it. It was like, every weekend, the arcade would be packed with young adults, playing it, waiting in line to take on the next opponent. It was a phenomenon. It was a cultural phenomenon at the time. And so I kind of had this dichotomy, because I loved going to arcades and playing Street Fighter and other fighting games and stuff like that competitively, but at the same time I actually did enjoy playing a lot of games casually at home. Super Mario World, Final Fantasy 2 and 3, which are actually Final Fantasy 4 and 6. Now that's what they're called. Back then they were called 2 and 3. A lot of the classic Square RPGs I always played. But a lot of other games like Zelda: Link to the Past, these were the games I grew up with. Okay, I did play some of the Nintendo originals and so all the classics, but really it was the Super NES is the system that I grew up with, and those became some of my most beloved games of my entire life. And at that time it was cool. It was a hobby. I was heavily into it, and I thought it was really nice, a really cool thing to do. I could go to arcades on the weekends, and on weekdays I could play my consoles at home. Now, during this period of time, there was no, the internet existed, but it wasn't mainstream. Not everyone had a computer. Not everyone had the internet. The internet it was very slow. It was dial-up. You couldn't watch videos over the internet. That notion was like preposterous. To download a single picture, it would go, So there was no way to cover an event like E3 besides getting a gaming magazine. Okay, and back then gaming magazines were huge. Electronic Gaming Monthly, Game Informer, Game Pro. Game Pro was insanely huge during the 90s. And these were the guys who, they were gaming media, they would get into E3, they would take pictures, they would play hands-on on the games, and then they would have these huge blowout exposés in their magazines the next month. They would sell ridiculous amounts of copies on the newsstand, and this is how you got your information about what games were coming up. And for me as a kid, I was like, wow, look at this event where you could just go in, and there are games from everywhere, and you can see fighting games, you can see shooting games, you can see racing games, you can see all the new technology. And keep in mind, this was the era of, again, Super Nintendo, Genesis, and then taking a step up to things like the PlayStation, the Dreamcast. There was these revolutionary jumps in technology at the time. I actually remember when Nintendo announced the Ultra 64, which is what the Nintendo 64 originally was called, and then it took them so long to develop the system because they wanted to go with cartridges instead of discs, that it got changed its name. It took 2 years of delays, and finally it came out. So I remember all that stuff, and that was all E3 announcements and stuff. So it was all magazine based, and no one ever fathomed that at one point in the future that normal people would be able to just get into these kind of things and fully cover them. You know what I mean? Who would have had the foresight to know that the technology would advance to the way that it has today? So all during the 90s, that era, I loved Street Fighter. I loved playing it in arcades, but I also loved playing games and consoles at home, and that was pretty much the dichotomy that I had in my life. Then around the year 2000, things changed. Around the year 2000, I actually attended my first major Street Fighter tournament, and I got bit by the bug, the competition bug. Previously in my local arcades, okay, I was always one of the best ones there. I could beat everyone up. There were a couple people who always gave me a challenge, and some people who actually were better than me, and they were kind of challenging me. Why don't you go to tournaments? We went to a couple tournaments. It was a lot of fun. And so I finally wanted to see what it was all about, and in 2000 I attended ECC, which is the East Coast Championships, which unfortunately no longer exists, but was a long-running tournament series, a major tournament series here for fighting games on the East Coast. And again, I got bit by the bug. I met so many different people who I never even knew existed from all across the country. Saw so many different levels of gameplay. I saw for the first time how deep the gameplay actually went at a competitive level for fighting games. That it's not just this upper echelon of stuff, that there's really layer upon layer, and that people from different regions of the country would actually play differently because they played in different regions and had different exposure to different opponents. And it would all come together at these events, and it was something so different than anything I'd ever experienced, just going to my local arcade and just playing the same people over and over. And so I'll admit, I got bit by the bug. And what ended up happening was during this period of time, I basically stopped playing console video games except for fighting games. So we're talking the Dreamcast era, the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era. Pretty much the only games that I played were fighting games. I had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Third Strike were on the Dreamcast. We had CVS 2, and different conversions of Super Turbo on PlayStation 1, later on PlayStation 2. There was never really a perfect version. But there were always like 4 or 5 fighting games that floated around on all that generation of console that everyone played. And literally this kind of thing lasted from around 2000 to 2004, maybe 2005, all throughout my college career, throughout my early employment. I would travel the country going to tournaments like ECC, and Philadelphia had a bunch of tournaments at the time, at an arcade called University Pinball. And I would travel and meet so many different people. I met all the top players, Justin Wong, Sanford Kelly, all the people on the West Coast. You know, I've met all these people through this experience. And it was crazy. It was like, wow, if I never played Street Fighter competitively, I never would have really gotten involved with this kind of stuff. I never would have traveled as much as I did. I never would have met these kind of people. But unfortunately, during that period of time, because I was investing so much time into doing this, I fell off from the console generation. So this was the gap where a lot of people say, gee, how'd you never play the Silent Hill games? How'd you never play this particular game on PS2? It's because that era, I was I was heavily focused primarily on fighting games only, okay? I wasn't following E3, I wasn't following any of this stuff. Incidentally, during that period of time, apparently a lot of controversy happened with E3 about was more about booth babes. Wow, talk about slip of the tongue. It was more about booth babes than the games anymore. It had become this really stupid press event that didn't really teach anyone about the new stuff coming out. It was just hype and over publicity about nothing. And so there was this like major reorganization of E3. At one point they decided there was going to be an E3 where the fans could attend and an E3 where the press could attend, and that was a flop. So E3 kind of went through some changes too. And also during this period of time, the internet finally came to prominence. And so for the first time, instead of having to go buy the physical magazine to learn about everything that was going to be coming out, you could just jump on the internet. You had IGN, you had GameSpot, you had these game websites that were covering these events. You had G4 TV, who was doing live coverage on TV of this event, which was unprecedented. And you would get to learn about the games almost instantaneously. So then between 2005 and 2007, my career as like a competitive gamer really ramped up, alright? A competitive Street Fighter player. In 2005, I went to EVO, and I had almost no money. I was like pretty much broke. I was pretty much, I just lost my job, and I went into there with an open mind saying, I'm just going to go out here and play and have fun. Because this may be the last time I ever get to do anything like this. I'm just going to go out there and blow it out of the water. I ended up getting 4th place in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo that year, and I'm the highest ranking American. The top 3 spots that year at EVO were Japanese players. So really I was the top ranked American that year in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Completely changed my mindset. I was like, man, if I just put my mind to it, and I kind of have this open mind mentality, I could probably beat a lot of the top players out there. I just need to really put the time and dedication into it and not be all stressed out about it. And for 2005, 2006, and 2007, I heavily was into Street Fighter. I was traveling the country, literally going to every major tournament. I mean, in 2007, I think I attended every single EVO qualifier except for one. And I actually had placed at like 2 or 3 of them and gotten spots to go into the finals at EVO. So it was like, you know, it was insane the amount of money, the amount of dedication I was putting into it. But then in 2007, I lost. You know, I didn't win. And I kind of sat down and took a look at my life and where it was going. I was like, you know, for the past 7 years, every time I've gone on a vacation, it's been to play Street Fighter. Every time I've traveled, it's been to play Street Fighter. And looking back, gee, I missed a lot of stuff. I really like video games. I like role-playing games, I like action games, I like platform games, and I haven't really been doing any of that stuff because I've been all into Street Fighter, Street Fighter, Street Fighter. And it was kind of like when I lost at EVO 2007, after the entire year of practicing, going to every major tournament and doing well, and then going to the Nationals and kind of sucking. It was kind of like a wake-up call, like, this really is such an investment of time, and if I'm not having fun the whole time I'm doing it, is it really worth it? And so I looked, I said, am I really having fun doing this? At times, yes, but not always. It is a heavy grind, and where is the payout for it? So I said, that's it. I'm going to make a change in my life. And it was also, unfortunately, during this period of time that I was diagnosed with my back injury. And so it made it harder for me to travel a lot. It made it harder for me to stand up for extended periods of time. Unless I'm like right here, where as you see, I'm kind of wobbling even just standing here. It's hard for me to stand still. And couldn't drive long distances anymore. And just a lot of things I had to adjust with my life. And at that time, as a gamer who had started off as like more of a casual, I like to play everything with the side of Street Fighter, transforming that into, now I'm just a hardcore competitive Street Fighter player, and then kind of changing it back to, I want to go back to how I was. I want to be able to play all the games. I want to be able to have fun with them. And so for about a year, from about 2007 to the fall 2008, I was just trying to play every game I could and re-immerse myself in the gaming culture. And it was at this point that, again, E3, you look at it and you're like, wow, look at all these new games coming out. Look at all this new technology, these new consoles. And I'm out of the loop. Like, I'm literally out of the loop of everything that's been going on because I've been so heavily focused on this Street Fighter, Street Fighter, Street Fighter. And at that time, I never, ever thought that, you know, after kind of almost quitting Pro Street Fighter, that I would use gaming to do anything with my life. You know what I mean? Especially as like a form of employment. At one point, I'll be honest, of course, I was an idiot. I thought, oh, I'm going to be the best Street Fighter player on the planet. I'm going to win every tournament. I'm going to be the only person to make a living doing Street Fighter. What a pipe dream that was. You know what I mean? There's just so many variables and so many factors and things going on. I always had a job. I always had responsibilities outside of me doing Pro Street Fighter. You know, I needed money to finance the career. So if I didn't work, I couldn't go to a tournament. But because I was working, I wasn't getting as much practice as people like Justin Wong, as people like Sanford Kelly, other people who really all they were focusing on was playing video games. So it was always a hurdle, something holding me back, where you had these people who, for whatever reason, I don't know how they did it, God bless them, they didn't work full-time jobs, and they were able to go travel the country and go to every tournament and become the best in the country. I don't fucking know how you did it, because I didn't have anyone handing me money saying, here, go do it. I had to work my ass to pay for all my trips. So it was a pipe dream. There was no way I was going to realistically make it happen. And I took a step back and I said, I just want to become a fan of gaming again. And then in the fall of 2008, as people know, things changed. Just one day I'm sitting down playing a game, I get frustrated, and I had seen that people have been doing these walkthroughs on YouTube. All of a sudden I go and I record myself playing a game, being real pissed at this game bug that was going on. And it just exploded from there. Me recording myself playing Street Fighter when Street Fighter 4 came out, and that was so popular. And, you know, for me, from a guy who really just started as, I just want to get back casually into gaming and re-immerse myself in the gaming culture because I've been out of it for 7 years. And then, all of a sudden, finding out that people think that I'm entertaining, that my reactions, that my opinions, that the way that I say things, the jokes that I crack, that people think that that's really entertaining, was like, wow, that's awesome. Now, not only can I enjoy these games, but I can share my enjoyment or my frustration or whatever it is I'm feeling at the time with thousands of people all over the world, and that is like the greatest thing ever. And so now, here we are, 4 years later, and I found a way, you know, by hook or by crook. It was basically kind of forced on me when I lost my full-time job in 2010. I got laid off, but I found a way to flip this hobby into a way to support myself. And now I've become so good at it, or so popular at it, that a company who has, you know, a business relationship with me, Machinima, is now willing to send me to E3 to cover this event that 10 to 15 years earlier I never thought I would ever be at this event. I had, again, me growing up reading about, wow, look at this that happened to E3 in a print magazine, and now to know that tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, actually, it'll be Tuesday, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there in person, and I'm going to be able I was at E3 and I played this game months ahead before it was even released, and I saw this world premiere for the first time, and then I was able to talk about it on the internet with all of my fans. Like, it's surreal, insanely surreal that someone like me has come from the past and the beginnings that I have and come to where I am now. Again, not anything I planned on, not anything I ever worked towards. I said this in my Ask the King video, which is my fan mail series where I answer questions earlier this week. I said, no, I'm not the kind of person that in the 90s I sat down and I said, in 10 years I see myself going to E3 and doing this and that. I've never been that kind of a future thinking person. I'm the kind of person, I do try to plan ahead as much as I can, but I don't look long term and make a plan out my life for 10 to 15 years. Because look at how much my life has changed in the past 15 years. I went from being a casual gamer to going in and out of several different jobs during the time that I was a pro Street Fighter player. Ended up losing my job several times to different things going on, people framing me, firing me in some jobs, in some cases, me getting laid off in 2010. Ended up coming out of being a pro Street Fighter player, going back into being a casual gamer, then actually kind of becoming a hardcore casual gamer, meaning I play everything and I'm like the Joe average guy, but I do play every game, so obviously I know I have more exposure and experience than the average person to games. And then finding a way to actually turn this hobby into a way to employ myself. Like, who the fuck 10 years ago, 15 years ago would have said that this would have happened? That's why I think these people that lay out a plan for their life, I think that's boring. I think that experiencing life as a series of occurrences and crazy stuff that can happen and fluctuate at any time makes it so much more interesting than say, in 2 years I want to get married, in 4 years I want to have a kid, in 6 years I want to move into a 5-bedroom house, in 10 years I want to take over the world, in 15 years I want to be God, and then I'll, I don't know. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't do that. I couldn't lay out that kind of a plot. That's not the kind of person I am. So I'm thrilled to be going to E3. And I'm hoping that this is the beginning of something that's ongoing, the beginning of something that, not only will continue, but it will be like the beginning of my existence as part of the mainstream. Now, that being said, don't think for a second that I'm going to sugarcoat anything. Don't think for a second that I'm going to be getting paid off by some company to say something about their game. I'm not. Will I be attending, stuff about a game called Hawken? Absolutely. But this is the first time I'm even seeing or experiencing the game. And same thing, anything that I see there, I'm going to give you my honest opinions on it, and we're going to check it out, and we're going to see exactly what's going on at E3. And that's the cool thing about me. I don't work for a company where I'm worried about ad revenue supporting my magazine. You know what I mean? I don't have to kiss Microsoft's ass, because if we don't kiss their ass, they won't give us an advanced copy of Halo 4 to review for our magazine. I am the common person. I'm in the same position as everyone out there, okay? I go get the games on release day. I play them at the same time as you. I give you my honest reactions, opinions, and feelings about them. So that's the uniqueness here. It's the honesty factor between us that I think is really going to make my presence as now being able to attend E3 and cover these mainstream events is going to be something completely different and a different spin on it that you've never seen before. At least that's what I hope it is for you. I hope it's entertaining. I hope it's informative, okay? So our plans for E3 week are to basically cover the entire convention. From what I've heard from what people who've been to E3 before and are sending me info, they say, Phil, to be completely honest, you're not going to be able to see everything. What ends up happening is there's so many people there, you have to wait in extremely long lines to even get your hands on a game demo, to even experience a lot of the most popular games. For example, Call of Duty, good luck even playing the new one. You're probably not going to get to play it, which is fine by me. We all know what it's going to be anyway. But I'm going to try to get as much coverage as I can. We're going to try to cover as many games as we can, record as much as we can. Things that we're not allowed to record, we're going to talk about. We're going to take notes about it, and we're going to talk about it later on. We're going to be doing daily recap videos, okay? Now, from what I've heard also, yes, the internet in LA is pretty wonky. It could be hit or miss. There may be several hours where the internet sucks ass, and then maybe later on it gets better. We are going to be set back from the LA downtown. We're going to be in Hollywood, so we may be at an advantage, we may be at a disadvantage, because that's kind of a tourist trap area, and I don't know what it's going to be like. But what I can tell you is we're going to try our best. We're going to record as much as we can. We're going to not only be doing E3 coverage, but also we're going to be doing our trip vlogs tomorrow as we go to LA. We're going to be hitting up Hollywood Monday night. Friday also on the way home, probably have final recap videos. You're going to see all kinds of stuff on DSP Gaming this week that I've always wanted to do and never have been able to do because I was never given the means. Machinima's given me the means. They deserve a massive amount of credit for letting someone like me go out here and do this kind of stuff. So I do want to give a special thanks to them as a company, as a group of people. I think a lot of the times because there's a big corporation, people get a bad rap. Machinima fully supports the people that work for them. I know you hear rumors about bullshit every once in a while. People didn't read their damn contracts and stuff like that, or don't even understand the contract they signed. Machinima is not malicious. They're out there, they're sticking up for the gamer, the common gamer, and that is an amazing thing. So thank you, Machinima, for sending me to E3, and I hope to do everyone proud while I'm out there, and I hope that you will tune in to DSP Gaming this week for the footage. So that's a little bit about me, my gaming past, my kind of reflections and feelings about being able and how amazing it is to be able to attend E3 this year. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will see you guys the next time you hear from me. You can follow me on Twitter at DSP or on Facebook. I'll be tweeting and putting up Facebook posts during travel and stuff. But the next time you'll see me in a video, we'll be in LA. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you in Hollywood.